Thank you so much to everyone for joining us this morning for our AI webinar part 2. We have 2 hours with exciting and fantastic speakers and topics to cover. So as I mentioned, this is part 2. If you've missed the first one, you can find it on the event page, and this session will also be recorded and will be uploaded to the event page website as well. So you will all have seen the program that's up right now. We are starting off with a very exciting panel debate on leveraging competency in AI, and we have science pitches from prominent researchers who use AI in their work. And finally, we will hear from investors on what they consider important when investing in AI companies. But firstly, let us introduce ourselves. So my name is Linda Solsund Dahlberg. I work as the Science and Innovation Policy Advisor here at the British Embassy in Oslo. I am a part of what is called the Science and Innovation Network, which is a network consisting of over 100 sinners, as we like to call ourselves, in over 40 countries across the world. We're funded both by the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, as well as the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. So science and technology plays a central role in the UK government strategy and is recently emphasized in the updated integrated review. So it is our aim to build and strengthen international relationships in science and innovation, and establish strategic collaborations, leverage funding on research and innovation, and to further develop bilateral science partnerships, as well as to establish links for larger collaborations, such as within programs like Horizon Europe. So essentially, we're driving prosperity and growth through science diplomacy. So that's a little bit about SIN. I will now hand over to Ane, who will tell you more about her role and about the Department of International Trade. Ane, over to you.
Thank you, Linda, and good morning, everyone. So as Linda mentioned, I work for the Department of International Trade, and I sit together with Linda at the embassy here in Oslo. And our department works as the government's international economic department, and we're responsible for bringing together policy, promotion and financial expertise to basically break down the barriers for trade and investment. And so in short, we support companies investing into the UK, but also companies exporting out of the UK. And in my role, I specifically focus on supporting Norwegian companies looking to invest into the UK. In our roles, we can advise and support companies on all fronts in terms of evaluating and entering the UK market. And this could involve things like market analysis, connections to key stakeholders, and questions around tax, accounting, and the practicalities. And I guess the final thing to note is that you'll find advisors like myself across the Nordics and the world, and we sit in your local markets. And you can easily come to us and we could give you this support free of charge on a confidential basis. We'll hand over to you a bit more information after this event in terms of both myself and Linda's services. But with that kind of short introduction to ourselves, let's just jump into the main focus of this event, which is our different segments. And with that, I'd like to introduce our first segment of this event, which is a panel conversation on artificial intelligence and machine learning competencies. And this is led by Claes Pettersen, CEO of Nuera. Nuera is the Norwegian Artificial Intelligence Research Consortium. So with that, over to you, Claes, and let's jump into the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne, for the introduction, and thank you to Anne and Linda for organizing this very nice event and to letting me lead this panel debate. So as Anne and Linda said, we will have a panel debate now about AI competencies. In the panel, we have some very good guests to discuss these important issues. Odd Gurvin from Norwegian Cognitive Centre, Geraint Jones from Innovate UK Knowledge Transfer Network, Petri Myllymäki, Vice Director of Finnish Centre of Artificial Intelligence. And I am the moderator. My name, as Ane said, is Claes Pettersen. I'm leading Nora, which is a collaboration in Norway within AI, machine learning, robotics, a collaboration between 8 universities, 2 university colleges, and 2 research institutes. So we do focus on AI competences, of course, in Nora, through research, through education, and through innovation. So let's introduce the panel, or more precisely, let the panel introduce themselves. We will start with Odd Gurvin. Please introduce yourself and Norwegian Cognitive Center, Odd.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Odd Gurvin. I'm a project manager at Norwegian Cognitive Center. My background is 30 years of experience in the private sector within technology, innovation, and communication, the last 20 of them in consulting. Norwegian Cognitive Center is a project initiated by the industry clusters, media, finance, seafood, ocean, and PropTech. And what we do is accelerating AI through sharing and building expertise. Our goal is to enabling different companies competitive advantage by using AI, and we help your company with AI development at minimal risk. And behind us, we have a consortium both of industry giants and private and public sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Odd. Let's move to Geraint Jones.
Hello, everybody. I'm Geraint Jones from KTN, based in the UK. So KTN are a not-for-profit organisation of about 200 people, and I'll just put a link into the chat for those that want to find out a bit more about KTN. And you can see, hopefully behind me here, what we look to do is connect for positive change. So we're funded by various stakeholders. We're delivery partners with various organisations, including Innovate UK, BEIS, Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy in the UK, and UKRI, UK Research and Innovation. And we have teams of sector experts in various areas, including AI. So we have we're funded by Innovate UK, BEIS, and others to help set up collaborations, partnerships between companies, between universities, between industry to look to disseminate best practice and to look to see what emerging and future technologies are that companies can best make use of. My specific role is I'm involved with KTP scheme. So at present in the UK, we have something over 800 companies who are involved in 1 to 3 year collaborations with universities, with someone employed as an associate by the university, but embedded within the company to transfer and embed particular technology, expertise or processes within the company. And as you might imagine, a lot of those projects to help the companies with a strategic need are involved with AI, and that KTP scheme that has actually also been running on a regional basis with a sister program in Sweden. So again, I'll just put a couple of links in the chat if anyone's particularly interested in KTP or KTP in Sweden.
Thank you very much, Geraint. Then please, Petri, introduce yourself and SwiftKey.
So hello, also on my behalf, I'm Petri Myllymäki, Vice Director of SwiftKey. I'm a professor of artificial intelligence and machine learning at University of Helsinki, one of the founding partners in SwiftKey. The other partners are Aalto University and VTT Technical Research Center of Finland. We are a so-called flagship of Academy of Finland, which means that our purpose, our objective is to create impact in AI, not only scientific impact within AI, also impact in other sciences, and most importantly, also impact in society in general, meaning public organizations and also the private sectors. That's our mission, and the funding is for 8 years.
Thank you very much. We have now a good mix of people in the panel here, both from academia and representing industry. So the first question we will turn into is how do we educate public and private sector? You also mentioned that you have a collaboration with universities at the KTN, the KTP scheme. Garant. So maybe you can start. How do you educate public and private sector?
So for the so what we do with the KTP scheme is it's got to be something where there is something in it for those three stakeholders. I think that's important if you're looking at academic company partnerships. There's got to be something in it for the companies. There's got to be a strategic need for the company, but they know that there's some missing piece of the jigsaw that they need help with. For a KTP scheme, there's also got to be good innovation, good academic interest for the academic team. So I think that's important. You know, your top AI experts might be able to solve a lot of problems, but you want them working on, you know, what's really going to be something that's helping them, helping them to push the boundaries. And it's also, I think, important as well, and this is where KTP scheme, I think, works especially well for AI, the associate who is looking to embed and transfer that knowledge, that technology into the company, they aren't the world's expert. They'll be someone who is a graduate, you know, a talented, probably early career in their 20s researcher, who will be, you know, pretty much a digital native and will be able to speak the same language in the company. So I think it's important not just to look at, you know, to try and push a technology. It's looking at what is important for the company, and that takes a little bit of time, you know, to build those relationships. So that's for the KTP scheme. That's what works there. I think otherwise there's, you know, a discussion to be had, to be thought about. Well, actually, you know, what can be done more generally? What can be done perhaps with more general tools? And, you know, and where do you require an expert? But I think the first thing is not to think from what works well for those KTP schemes. It's looking to match the need with the requirement. And however good the technology is, if it doesn't really quite fit with the need, then it's not really going to work as well as it could do.
Exactly. Yeah, could you add on to that? How do you in the Norwegian Cognitive Center work to kind of educate both the public and private sector?
Yeah, we have, this is a project, and we have been active for 12 months, and we have met over 100 different companies, both public and private. What we see is a lack of competence from the board to the management and the middle management, meaning that AI is often in companies bottom-up development. But there is some issues here, because digital capabilities and understanding of AI in the business ahead of AI initiative will facilitate and drive early stages of the process. This lack of expertise will give unrealistic expectation of what AI can do, because an AI project isn't ordinary another digitalization project. Here is no clean budget. Here is no clean deadline for the project. The AI project is mostly exploring and train of data models. where it go fast or slow, depending on data and tuning the data. 2/3 of the project time is exploring and training and get the data in order to function. So the middle management and the management has to be open to let the developers exploring and the organization to explore themselves. So in my point of view, it is crucial that the management seize the time and use the opportunity to see what AI can do for their company. And to create to get that point, we have to create a bit of enthusiasm around it, showing AI cases, and we have to create a little bit panic so that they see that the rest of the world and the rest of our competitors are moving forward. So we have to do something about it also.
So what you say is that the companies, they have to have a model where they actually could dedicate time for people to explore and maybe play around with AI?
Yeah, because the developers has in their DNA to self-train and get continuous education and learn new stuff. And they have to give space and time to do just that. So give them the opportunity to explore.
We will discuss further how to do this continuous education as well. But Petri, in FK and in Finland, how do you work to educate the public and private sector?
Well, yes, maybe just to repeat that, I mean, like all our 60 AI professors, they educate students like we do in the universities, and I think that's kind of that's the easiest knowledge transfer we have, that our people graduate and they go to companies and public organizations. That's obvious. Then on top of that, we have been trying to create this kind of sense of urgency, or kind of a did Gerard said panic, or kind of who said that among the business leaders. So we have been been running series of events where we try to make people understand that they need to do something. So there's one series of events is called AIX Forum that I'm running. X stands for anything else except AI. So it's AI meets something else. So this has been very much about other sciences, but also some sectors of society like traffic, public services, and so forth. So okay, so then if they realize that they need education, then an instrument that we have tried, the both founding universities have already kind of an instrument for offering tailored education for companies for a fee. So there's, for example, we have a kind of a diploma in AI that is, my understanding is that it consists of a few 2-day modules, and this can be tailored for different companies. This costs money, but this seems to be working very well. The bottleneck is that this is like on top of our normal duties. So the teachers are our professors who have already much duties on their plates. So we can maybe alleviate the problem a little bit by paying them a fee for doing this extra service, but still this doesn't scale up enough. So the demand is higher than what we can offer. So that's the situation at the moment.
So you're touching upon a very important point, I think, with lifelong learning. And if I understand you correctly, the universities in Finland do take a central role in that. But as you say, you need maybe more dedicated time to it, or how could you scale this up? Is it a need for scaling it up? Is it kind of a central point of the university? Should the universities have a large focus on this? What do you think about this, Petri?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like I think I feel a sense of people are worried because I mean we already have duties like research, obviously, then university education, societal impact in general, and now people are talking about lifelong learning, helping people to educate themselves outside the academia. That's a kind of an extra duty, but nobody is giving additional resources to actually do this. So what we are doing through this, for example, AI diploma, is that it's kind of the companies pay, but there's still a bottleneck. I mean, the time that the professors can allocate to this is limited. So it's kind of a, I think this would require this new type of thinking that lifelong learning is important. It means a kind of a new type of thinking also in resourcing universities or other institutes who provide this type of education.
I think this is central. I mean, it used to be so that we educated ourselves and people had this more or less the same job for their entire life. This is dramatically changing and has been changing the last years. And also, I mean, things will never go as slow as now. Things will go even faster in the future. So lifelong learning will be even more central. I don't know.
If I could just make a comment there, I absolutely agree. You know, the need for learning and education lifelong about AI. I'd say maybe there's two things though. There's one is the awareness of what AI can do and you know, so some basic knowledge there. And the other thing is expert knowledge. And I think we shouldn't necessarily confuse the two. Yes, we want to increase awareness, but we're not going to train everyone up to be an AI expert. But I think, you know, it is important that, you know, absolutely everyone, yes, you know, knows the possibilities, keeps up to date, and it's not a one-off thing. It is absolutely lifelong as things develop as to the, you know, the implications, the possibilities, and the uses of AI.
If I may add one thing, I think this is really interesting. Life is, as you said, like things are changing rapidly. One thing is that there's an abundance of open online courses available from top universities, Stanford, Berkeley, MIT, so forth. And maybe the mindset of the new generations is more geared towards like this kind of Netflix generation, that they kind of pick one thing from there and here and another thing from there. And the idea of staying like in one university for 5 years and listening to a couple of same professors, in the future it may be a little bit strange for this new generation. And I think the universities need to take this into account and accept that this is the life we are living now, and they have to react to this fact somehow. I'm not saying that the game is lost. I mean, universities can be clever and think like, okay, maybe kind of a new forms of education, like, okay, you go to Coursera and take one Stanford course there, but maybe I can help you locally by giving you mentoring, like one-to-one mentoring or small group mentoring, and maybe you have questions you want to ask and kind of move towards this direction. And this can extend to, I mean, outside the universities as well.
So you think maybe the future universities that their role is even more towards mentoring, personal mentoring, and then that the students could combine university courses with courses that they find at the internet wherever?
Yeah, when I said like there's a problem with resourcing, this kind of classroom teaching, it's not the only way to work, and it's kind of it's for the couple of few hundred years it has been the dominant way of educating people, but kind of this type of mentoring, small group working, and so forth, maybe that will come back. I mean, this is just speculation, of course, but I see hints of this phenomenon emerging.
I see a quite dramatic change in my daily life after COVID with kind of meetings, digital meetings, and so on. Have you seen the same in the universities, that the kind of students tend to new resources, maybe do even more online courses and so on?
Yeah, I think definitely. I saw this already during the last few years, and now it has just accelerated. So this is something that I think like we need to very seriously think, like how to renew the university education in general, without, I mean, sacrificing the quality, of course. But universities have the top experts, and now the question is, like, how can we help the surrounding society in the best possible way?
Exactly. And
Martin, I may just comment in the wider sense with KTN. So before COVID, we were, most of us were working from home, used to doing things online. We put on behalf of Innovate UK and BAYS a lot of workshops, and that pivoted and then went online, and you can reach huge amount more people online. So I think yes, there are certainly things learned from COVID. It's perhaps easier to network, to put to build communities in one way, but it's more difficult to get that one-to-one sort of spark. But that's very much a part. I mentioned KTP and what I was saying earlier, but very much part of what we look to do with KTN to leverage requirements from Innovate UK and BAYS and others, is to look to build those communities. Best practice, yes, a bit of fear, as Odd said. What are other people doing? Let's copy that. Case studies, I think all of that's very, seems to work very well. So I'll just put a couple of links if people can look to see what sort of things happening in the UK in that regard.
I would also ask, especially maybe Garant and Odd, because I mean, lifelong learning often is at a relatively basic level, but what about research collaborations and educating at a higher level? Do you see a need for more collaboration with industry and between industry and universities also when it comes to research project development, Odd?
Yeah, first I'm gonna go back a bit to the last question, because World Economic Forum report says that 1/3 of the most important skill sets needed in 2025 is absent today. So the business model of universities should be adjusted and for a lifelong learning, so that people could get small courses needing those skill sets they need to develop their competence besides the working job, the daily job they have. And regarding the second question, I absolutely think that there should be some more collaboration between both students and projects and students, and professor upon projects and projects upon professors. That would give a huge boost both to the project and to the professor who is actually participating in real life project. And I think that would be a great forthcoming process for both sides.
How do you see kind of the AI competence, how to increase the AI competence in the general public? Is that this is also something that we should aim at, not only in the universities or in industry, I guess, but also in the general public? Do you have any thoughts about that, if you go to Petri first?
Well, yeah, first of all, I find it highly interesting that we have now several online courses available, and it's like you can design those courses. Maybe university students can use them, but you can also offer them then for free for the more general audience. And the interesting thing is that, for example, the Elements of AI course, which is now reaching 1 million users, if you look at the statistics, you would imagine that AI is for, I mean, the most interested people would be young men, but it's actually not like that. I mean, in Finland, more than half are women. Even in globally, almost half are women, which I find very surprising, considering the fact that, I mean, now we are counting countries from Asia and Africa, and very many people are over 45 years old. almost like maybe 25% if I remember correctly. So this means that if people are giving an opportunity to learn something that they think is interesting, they will do it, and in all different groups of people, not only the groups that we assume are interested in the topic. So I find this fascinating.
I would say, you know, positive case studies are important. It's also important, you know, to link with people and to say, well, you know, the issues that you think are important, you know, here's perhaps how AI can help with those. So I'll just post an example in the chat there. So that's something that happened to be a KTP. But where AI has actually been used to develop tools to counter fake news and online misinformation. AI, you know, it's often negative, but you know, you can equally well use it, but use it very very positively. Also, I think you know, as I alluded to you know, to say, well, you know, rather than necessarily push, you know, what AI can do this, AI can do that. It's to look to say, well, what are your issues? What are your problems? To find out what they are, and then come back with, well, the way AI could help with could help you in that respect is this and is that. So I think it's you know, case studies, positive messages, and saying, look, you know, AI can do many things. If you want to help us do things that are really positive and good outcomes for you, let's work with you. Let's do that. But let's find out what you want us to help with, rather than, I think if you have it as technology push, then it can scare people a bit.
Do you have any reflections from Norway, Odd?
I think that we are using AI on the mobile or different services every day. What the general people should reflect on is, how could AI improve my living? But I'm more concerned that they have to set it in context of their daily work or daily life. But not deep knowledge about AI is not necessary. You don't have deep knowledge about mobile or different technology, but the concept of AI and how this could improve and affect our daily life is important. So a general information, not it will grow after the time.
If I can follow up on that, like if we, so it appears that people are interested in AI. They want to have at least some basic understanding of what is this phenomenon everybody is talking about. And I think it's important that there are like very kind of low barrier ways of learning the basics of AI, like online courses or something, or events like this that we are now in, or that the only solution cannot be that enroll to a university and have a 5-year degree, then you know what AI is. Or, I mean, like this is again like a generation gap that people are used to look it up in Wikipedia or Google it up, and they want to have answers fast and kind of filtered and kind of and that's good. I mean, if they go to a source that is kind of legitimate, maybe an online course offered by a university, instead of going to their bubble in Facebook or Twitter, and then they are vulnerable to misinformation, like, I mean, fake news. That's this Gerard's example is about. Like, I think it's very good that people try to find factual information, and we should support that very much.
If I listen to you, I think you all agree, and I think also Odd said it literally, that the business models of the universities should be changed or adjusted for lifelong learning. First of all, do you all agree? Petri, from the university side, do you agree on that? Should we try to change the business model, or is that too drastic?
This is difficult, of course. I mean, like, whenever I discuss this within the university, the people are worried that what will happen with the universities. I mean, like, and even the word business model is alarming to some people. But I think universities can and they should be kind of evolve, since our society is evolving. Universities have been evolved. I mean, if we compare to what universities were 2,000 years ago, they have some commonalities with the universities of today, but they have changed. So universities can change, and then they should change. I don't know how it's without sacrificing the kind of the, let's say, the academic quality of the universities. I mean, people talk a lot about these online learning courses, micro degrees, making everything, as I was also saying, like making everything easily accessible and easy. But I mean, like, if you really talk about higher education, that's not always, it's cannot be always just easy. So I mean, like, it's also hard work. So how do we combine all these different angles?
Yeah, you need some kind of long-term planning as well. But what you say, I think, is that we also need more kind of shorter courses, easier accessible both for industry and for students. That maybe the future is not kind of studying for 1 year and then having an exam, but shorter courses, right?
Yes, yeah. That's an interesting angle, and kind of one problem is, I don't know about the other countries, but like in Finland, the funding model is very much based on the traditional degrees. Like, even in the worst case, not bachelor degree is not counted. It's the 5-year master's degree is the first time a university gets a point. And if 5 years in the fast evolving modern society is a long time, and people are just not, they just cannot commit themselves to do that. Maybe we should maybe have a shorter degrees. They go to professional life, maybe then come back for a couple of additional courses. And I think this is what lifelong learning is about.
Exactly. I don't know if other Grant has anything to add to this.
The university has the best teacher and the best foundation to give me the competence and the special competence I need now. But my choice is to often to choose. I can't choose the best, because you have a model that don't fit me, because I have to work 40 hours a week, and I have to do my learning in the evening or otherwise. And so the best package for me ain't available for me, because the teachers ain't available for me, and the courses ain't available for me.
Exactly. We are now actually discussing the third question that I wanted to bring up about how to transfer knowledge from academia to industry. So if you have any more thoughts about how could we, I don't know if I like the word transfer, actually. I would like more collaborate on this. How should the universities and industry collaborate to get knowledge, diffuse also research knowledge, the kind of forefront of the research field, to diffuse that into industry? I think Ketjan already does that in a way. Do you have any thing to say about this point, Grant?
Yeah, sure. Well, perhaps just to link in from the previous point and then lead into that. So in terms of business models for universities, it's not for me to say what the business models of universities should be. But what I would say, all organizations these days, I think, should be looking, at what is their purpose, what is their impact. And, if you're a university who perhaps in the past has said, we are a top research university, and what we do is put out high quality publications, and, we want to be one of the best universities in the world, but maybe there isn't so much thought about, well, how are we impacting, our area and the companies around our area. Yes, I think it's good, for universities to think about what impact they're making, and proactively to think about how they can make a positive impact, rather than necessarily, just pushing the academic boundaries. Universities do a lot more than that. I wouldn't want it to go the other way, where universities are saying, you know, we're a public service. We're trying to educate everyone, and you know, we take the eye off the ball in terms of blue sky research. So I think with all organisations now, we're looking at, it's not just about money. It's not just about, you know, the main thing we want to do. It's looking at being positive and how, you know, what do we do, you know, affects the world. So coming on, you know, between knowledge transfer between universities and companies, you know, I think it's got to be something where there is a need from the company. So you've got to identify the need. You've got to identify how the university best can address that need by doing that transfer, and that very rarely, I think, happens as a one-off connection. So somehow you need to, you know, build up that community, build up that awareness. For what I'm directly involved with KTP, where people like myself, we broker meetings between organisations and companies. We also have business development people embedded or employed by the universities, effectively funded by the overheads from the KTP scheme. So I think really it's a contact sport. I identify the need. Different universities will have different knowledge transfer mechanisms, but it's you know, initially I think you know, how do you transfer the knowledge? The transferring of the knowledge isn't too difficult if you can understand, you know, what the company requirement is, and you have academics that say, yes, that's a really interesting issue, we want to do that. Once you've done that, you will find funding, you will find a way to do it.
How do we create this ecosystem where kind of the industry and research environment work together, I guess, on also then on research projects on development within artificial intelligence?
Yeah, the university today has one focus. There are several focus, of course, but the focus is to deliver value to the students. If they broaden this a bit and give value to the society and to the community, they could do mentorship, involve professor into mentoring both companies and projects. We can match project with students and vice versa. We can also do mentorship with open day communities for let's say a catapult or AI cluster, and the professors are available there one day a month, just to interact much more, because one conversation with one specialist could move me as a company or a person a giant leap in the mindset and the knowledge I need to solve that problem. So interaction is crucial somehow.
We also have a comment here about the system in the US, where typically also a professor has a position in a private company, and the professor maybe work 10 months a year at the university and then a couple of months for the private company in the industry. Is that kind of a model to adapt more, Petri? Do you think that could be also applied more in the Nordics, in UK, in Europe?
Yeah, I have always had difficulties in kind of understanding what is the critical thing about this US model. Is it I mean, like, it's some people say that they are only paid 10 months a year, but I mean, like, I could have the same wage in my university and then they just say that this is just for 10 months. I mean, like, nothing changes. I think the critical issue is, like, if you are outside the kind of the IPs for 2 months yourself and not for they do not belong to the university. If this is the idea, well, at the moment I own my own IP anyway, so it's maybe in Finland not a big deal. But I think the mindset, like how to encourage professors to kind of get more involved in collaboration with the industry and public organizations, that's something that we should do. And ecosystems were mentioned, and Odd mentioned interaction. I think one kind of critical point in this ecosystem is that not all, let's say, top experts, let's say that I have a professor who is brilliant in developing kind of groundbreaking AI algorithms in machine learning or whatever. But not all these brilliant scientists are very good in interacting with people in the first place, or to say that interact with companies. So they need somebody to be the interface towards companies. And how do we make all this happen so that there's an ecosystem where everybody can work in the role that fits their kind of their mental capacity and expertise, serves that the best way? That I think this is the kind of critical thing, and this kind of a bridge builders are not, they are sometimes overlooked. That kind of, okay, everybody respects a person who publishes pioneering work in AI, and it's very difficult to understand. And then sometimes, I mean, companies may be very good in commercializing ideas, but there's this huge gap, like who fills the gap, and again, with which resources. There's like Gerard was mentioning, that once you find the idea that, okay, here's a know-how and expertise, or kind of maybe, let's say, an algorithm that the company can use, and the company has a business idea, after that, it's pretty straightforward and it's like downhill. Doing science is like basic research, fundamental research, that's well funded, and that's pretty straightforward. But anything that happens or should happen in between, I find that there's a missing bridge, or there's a gap.
Absolutely. I should also mention that that Nuera actually has a branch trying to do this bridging between at least the startup community and the university community. So we have a branch called Nuera Startup, where we actually have been able to create this ecosystem where researchers collaborate with the startup companies. And I was I mean, I think the biggest challenge there is kind of to engage the researchers. So what we did, which was, I think, quite successful, is to have a quite high expectations from the startup companies. So only startup companies doing research-based innovation is allowed to be part of Nuera Startup, because you need a certain level. You need to get rid of all the buzzwords and all the companies that are not kind of doing serious AI, and this has been quite successful. We have been able to create many webinars where researchers and startup companies are joining forces, doing also applications together, working on projects together. So that's a way to go. I think we should end up this discussion. I think we have. Just to sum up, I think we have been through many aspects. The leaders should be educated. People working in industry should have more dedicated time to play around, to investigate, to use AI. Also, the business model of the universities might have to change. We should focus on smaller courses, shorter courses, more courses to come up, both for the students maybe, but also for lifelong learning. I don't know if any of you have kind of a final remark that I have forgotten in this summary.
Well, just to say, you know, often companies they would say, yes, we want to put AI into our company. We want to be involved with the universities, but then, you know, it's not clear why they think AI would be useful, and, you know, difficult to engage the academics. So one thing, you know, we have a KTN scheme, is talking to companies where we sort of do it the other way around. We say, well, what are your challenges as a company? And we give them 3 challenges. And then we say, okay, what are the areas that could help, you know, address those challenges? And then we have 5 or more digital enablers, and to say, okay, we'll use one of these digital enablers, and one of those is AI and ML, and we'll just dip the toe in the water and just see how that works against one of your issues, one of your problems. So I think, and we also have, you know, other things called innovation canvas, where if a company comes along and says, we have a definite idea, we want to you know, to do this, and we want to get involved with the university, we go through them and say, well, have you got the resource? Do you really want to do that? So I think a bit of sort of triage or working with the companies to actually formulate their approach to the university can often be you know, beneficial. And I've just put a link in with relation to that.
Thank you so much, Odd, Petri, Garant, for a really nice and fruitful panel discussions. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Klaas, Odd, Petri, and Gerard. This was really, really interesting, a very fascinating discussion that I don't think is over yet. However, it is over for this webinar because we are moving on to the science pitch segment. So here we will hear from 4 scientists from various countries using AI in different sectors. They will give a maximum of 8 minutes per presentation, and then we will leave a couple of minutes for questions. So please do post questions in the chat bar. First up, we have Marcus Lingman. Dr. Lingman is a physician and strategist from Halland Hospital in Sweden. He was awarded the title AI Swede of the Year last year in 2020, and he will talk about how you can use data to make better informed decisions in patient healthcare. So I'll bring up your slides now, Marcus. And welcome.
Thank you, Linda, and I hope you can both hear me and see me. Please confirm if that's the case.
Yes.
And I cannot see my own slides yet. However, I will start with the first slide. There you go. Thank you. So I'm Marcus Lingman. I'm Chief Strategy Officer in a region in southern Sweden called Halland. We're a healthcare provider covering, and we can go to the next slide, covering a population of approximately 300,000 people, and we have 8,000 employees to provide that care, including 3 hospitals, ambulance services, primary care, home care, etc. So that's my setting. Next slide, please. So what we've been doing over the last 6 or 7 years is to work towards what we now call information-driven care. And what is information-driven care? Well, it's actually using all the data that we provide and create in our complete healthcare system, turning that data into information and further on to insights in order to alter our behavior to create better patient value in terms of life and health. And that's what we usually call working along the value chain of knowledge. And this is a notion that takes us towards precision healthcare on a systems level. Next slide, please. And in order to do that and also deploy machine learning capabilities, as you can see, this work was built up together with collaborators from the Harvard Medical School and also their Harvard's affiliated hospitals and MIT. The first step we took, and this was 6 years ago now, was to create a data warehouse where we combined all the data on the granular level, on the individual level, from providers, patients, and all parts of the healthcare system and the complete care chains from all perspectives. So resource perspective, clinical data, patient data, protection data, and all the data we could find in our 400 software that produce them all the time. And now we can do variability analysis within the healthcare system, but we can also use machine learning methodologies in order to create new insights. Next slide, please. So in order to do that, we first realized that we could not understand our cost and cost drivers with the granularity needed. So together with Harvard Business School, we developed a new accounting system together with Bob Kaplan, who is the father of ABC ABC costing, and we now use a version of that called patient encounter costing, which is tailor-made for a healthcare system and cost allocation and descriptions. But we also put on the warehouse now with the raw data from all covering the whole healthcare system, analytical tools like Python, R, and MATLAB and others who have the capabilities of AI programming. So next slide, please. And for that, for using all this data, we also started what we call a Center for Information-Driven Care, where we combined all the competencies needed in order to not only program and use the data, but also understand the data and understand better what it's used for. So here we combine data scientists and clinicians and legal team and others in order to get in the right direction from the beginning. And this is, and to connect to the previous discussion here, this is a joint venture between the university, who has a massive resource allocation towards applied AI research, specifically in healthcare. So next slide, please. We do this from a perspective where we want to develop our healthcare system, but also doing that in a scientific manner. And a number of the development initiatives that we do in the healthcare system have also been published in peer-reviewed scientific papers. So we do, in a way, translational work, research, and we also have a focus on applied AI. The development of AI, including explainability, etc., is not our only focus, but one of the focuses we have going forward. So next slide, please. The current focus is, together with the university here, is privacy-preserving techniques in order to scale our solutions together with other healthcare systems, and dig into more explainable AI so that the clinicians in the system can feel safe, and that causality can be revealed in the models that we develop. We're working on a fast route for application of new AI models in order to deploy them on the real world data, as we are doing right now. We are focusing on multi-omics, genetics, etc., to combine different omics with each other in order to create new insights based on these big data that are created. We go further into health economics on the systems level, but also on the individual level, in order to understand, if you do a development in one part of the healthcare system, what happens then indirectly in terms of resource utilization in another part of the healthcare system. And then we are very much into the understanding of the new regulations, all the existing ones, the new ones, medical device regulations, but also the new EU law that is soon in place, we hope. So next slide, please. In order to do this, we built the ecosystem that was mentioned in the previous discussion, together with a number of universities, the university that belongs to the region itself, but also national authorities, including financing authorities like the one called Vinnova in Sweden, which is a government financing innovation. So final slide, next slide, please. This work is done in order to achieve what we call predictive precision medicine, or predictive precision healthcare, where we use AI on the individual level, but also on the systems level, in order to see patterns in the data that are predicting what will come and basing our decisions based on those insights. And if you want to know more, we created a collaboration spot that we call Leap for Life, and there you can Google that and come in contact with us, or mail me in directly if you wish. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcus. Let's just go back here. Thanks. I don't think there's a lot of time for questions, but I do have one just very briefly. So obviously, there's great potential in applying AI and machine learning to medicine, but I can imagine it's also being kind of limited in a way by different barriers when it comes to personal details and information. How do you see this going forward? Is there a way that we can develop the field in a way that we can progress at a faster rate than we do now?
Well, indeed, policy development is underway, and also technical solutions is underway, like federated learning, distributed analytics, and other privacy-preserving techniques in order to be able to scale and collaborate across legal borders. So there are a number of barriers, but the barriers are well identified also by at least Swedish policymakers, and I'm fairly hopeful in this sense, but the barriers are very heterogeneous and different. Competence access is another one. So you need to meet them one by one in appropriate manners.
Great. Thank you so much for taking part today, Marcus. And I'm sure, this is a really fascinating area of using AI. So I'm sure if people want to connect and collaborate, I'm sure they can reach you somehow.
Most welcome.
Great. Okay, so next up we have Aidan Doherty from the University of Oxford. Dr. Doherty will speak about his research using the UK Biobank and how AI has helped to share insights into behaviors and health risks. Over to you, Aidan. I will bring up your slides.
Fabulous. Many thanks, Linda. And like others in today's panel, I'm really excited about the potential for the use of AI in healthcare, but in a very careful and considered fashion. And in particular today, I'll just share some of the work we've been doing at Oxford then around reproducible machine learning of wearable data sets in healthcare. And the aim of my own group at Oxford is very much to try and redefine our understanding of how physical activity and sleep are associated with a range of healthcare conditions such as cardiovascular diseases, cancers, type 2 diabetes, etc. And I should say that I also lead Health Data Research UK's efforts around reproducible machine learning in healthcare. So if we could go to the next slide, Linda. The background to this is that there are currently around 8 million people walking around day to day in the UK, and I'm sure a similarly large subset of the Nordic populations are walking around day to day with consumer-grade wearable devices. Think of them as Fitbits, Apple Watches, Garmin devices, Polar devices, etc. And these devices and collect information on a wide range of physiological traits, such as activity, sleep, heart rate and rhythms. And at the minute, this represents just a huge wealth of largely unexploited information. And the reason for that is that such data is not linked to clinical outcomes, so it's very much limited in its use and applicability to clinical medicine. So what we really need are large-scale studies of wearables that are linked up to electronic healthcare records. And if we go to the next slide, in the UK, we're very fortunate to have what I believe is one of the world's leading biomedical research studies, namely the UK Biobank. So this study it contains 500,000 participants who were recruited between 2006 and 2010 across 23 different sites around the UK. And individuals would come into an assessment centre and have their height, weight, blood pressure taken. They were asked a range of questions on their health status, their family health history. Also, they provided blood and saliva samples, meaning that we can assay and ascertain genetic information on these individuals. A number of them are currently returning back to the sites to have their hearts, brains, livers, abdomens imaged using MRI imaging. They've had eye tests. And a key thing about the UK Biobank is that all the individuals have provided consent for linkage of this data to their NHS records. So we then therefore know who goes to hospital, when they go to hospital, and what they've went to hospital for. And I think the true gift of the UK Biobank to the world is that this is an open resource that any bona fide researcher around the world can apply for access to. So I in Oxford do not have any special additional access over what someone in Copenhagen or Helsinki or Oslo might have. So, and as well, this resource is open to not just academics or clinicians, it's also open to commercial companies. The only terms of use of the resource are that the research must be conducted in the public good, and also any results must be returned back into the resource so that the 20,000 other registered research users of the UK Biobank can benefit and build upon what individual companies or academics do. And the UK Biobank is also a wonderful resource to redefine our understanding of physical activity and sleep. So we have provided 100,000 users with research-grade wearable devices, such as the one I'm holding up here now. Think of it as a research-grade Fitbit, essentially, that we ask people to wear on their wrists. And these devices capture a huge volume of data. We capture around 180 million data points per person per week. And if we go to the next slide, one of our challenges then is can we identify patterns or signatures in this time series data that indicate if someone is sitting or walking or driving or sleeping. So it's here that AI is incredibly important and useful and to help us learn and identify these patterns. As we go to the next slide, the intuition is then from this time series data, what we do is we extract a series of time and frequency domain features and then use first of all, a random forest classifier to say whether a person is walking, sitting, rowing. Then afterwards, we smooth over those predictions using a hidden Markov model. The intuition of that is if a person is sleeping for 30 seconds, sleeping for 30 seconds, bike riding, sleeping, it's unlikely someone went for a bike ride in the middle of the night. So we just smooth over those predictions. And these methods perform really well with an accuracy of around 90%. As we go to the next slide, what we've then done is deploy this in the UK Biobank, and we can build up this 24-hour model of what human movement behaviours look like in this case, 90,000 people. And we can see reassuringly at 4 a.m. most people are asleep, and then during the day there's a lot of sedentary behaviour, unsurprisingly. And the beauty of this being embedded in a biobank is that when we can begin to associate a range of other health measurements with it. Here I've shown an example of the first genetic variants that were discovered that are related to machine-learned traits from a wearable device. So we discovered new genetic and biological insights into sleep and physical activity. And this opens up exciting new possibilities for possible therapeutic targets in future. And we go to the next slide, which is our penultimate slide. as well, these measurements have been used to help redefine our understanding in terms of predicting who might go on to develop heart disease. So if we could just move to the next slide, please, Linda. So what we have done then is it is 7 years since these individuals wore the wearable device, and we can use that then to predict who goes on to develop heart disease versus who not. And could we show the next slide, please? We're almost there. There was just 2 slides left. Oh, we're getting the little blue. I'll keep talking, it's fine. Looks like there's just a problem with the slides. So essentially, what we have done then is found, thank you very much, is of these people then who wore the device, unfortunately 3,500 have gone on to develop heart disease 5 years later. And using the sensors here, we've been able to redefine our understanding of activity, because we found for the most active individuals, they've got a 40% reduction in their risk of developing cardiovascular disease. This is twice as much as we had previously thought. When we were in the past, we were just asking people what they do rather than directly measuring it. The implication of this is that physical activity is probably almost twice as important as we had previously thought for the prevention of cardiovascular disease. And final, if we could just go to the final slide, please. I hope I've shown you that there are some very exciting possibilities for the use of the UK Biobank, not just in the UK, but internationally. And what I'd love to see then is cross-country collaboration, whereby we embed, for example, wearable sensors in other large biobanks, such as the FinGen project in Finland or the HUNT study in Norway. It would be great if we could harmonise measurements across these large-scale biobanks. And also there's many opportunities for collaboration around reproducible machine learning to ensure trustworthy clinical insights. And then finally, the integration of this biobank and omic data with longitudinal clinical outcomes and the use of wearables provides lots of opportunities for new industry and academia partnerships to identify new therapeutic targets. One such example is between Oxford and Novo Nordisk. We're starting a new program of activities in this space, but there are many more opportunities for partnerships in this space, and I'd be very open to collaboration with colleagues either in the UK or in the Nordic countries. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Aidan. Sorry about the technical glitch there. My computer froze up at the best possible time. So I'm sorry that we don't have a lot of time for questions, but I do want to ask you one. Is there a concern that using big data and AI will lead to a certain mentality when people come to the physician's office, in that they're being met with averages and statistics and numbers instead of a personalized individual approach?
Okay, so I guess the question is basically, could I just ask you to rephrase that question ever so slightly, just to make sure I've properly understood it?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to address the concern that we're losing the individual focus and rather looking at numbers and the big data.
So I would actually provocatively argue the other way around. So I think these big data sets, one of the hopes about these is that they can lead to more personalized medicine than we currently have. So, for example, currently, if trying to assess one's risk of heart disease, we look at just some very crude indicators of risk, such as age, sex, ethnicity, and family health history, which is not really personalized to a person's individual physiology. So the use of these big data resources, I think, actually can lead to more personalized and better healthcare for individuals, whereby we consider other physiological and behavioral traits that we just simply couldn't have done before because we didn't have large enough studies and to look at individual subgroups of the population. So yeah, while I take your concern on board, I would actually optimistically believe that these big data sources can really transform future clinical care and make clinical care more personalized for individuals, and also to help clinicians do their jobs and assist them to do their jobs better.
Yeah, I really hope you're right. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for the presentation. It's really, really interesting. So let's move on. Next scientist to present is Oliver Barrowclough from SINTEF. He will talk about digital twins and their project, which is a part of Horizon 2020's framework program. So please, Oliver, take it away. I will upload your slides now. Just one moment. Oh, you got it. Perfect.
Yeah, I've got it. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thanks.
Yeah, so thanks, Linda and Anna, for the invitation to talk here. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, I have a background in mathematics and computer science, but since last year I've been working in this European Horizon 2020 project called Change to Twin. So this is coordinated by SINTEF. So in Change to Twin, we're looking at supporting manufacturing SMEs, assisting in the implementation of digital twins. So in this talk, I'm going to give a brief overview of the project and discuss how the enabling technologies such as artificial intelligence can be used in the digital twin context. So I don't think there's one singular definition of digital twin that's universally accepted, but the concept is well established. So the definition we use in the Change to Twin project is as follows. A digital twin is a digital replica of an artifact, process, or service that's so accurate that it can be the basis for decisions. So this definition makes it clear that the decisions that need to be made are the driving force behind what the digital twin actually entails. There's also a point that digital twins often serve several purposes, so they need to be accurate and complete enough to be used by different stakeholders in different contexts. So digital twins come in many shapes and sizes. One example of an extremely large-scale project is this EU project known as Destination Earth. So this aims to build a digital twin of the entire planet. On a much smaller scale, small geographical scale at least, there are examples of digital twins of cities, such as this virtual city project at Chalmers University in Sweden. And on an even smaller scale, we can also consider modeling individual machines or processes in a manufacturing context. So it's this that's the focus of the Change to Twin project. So when it comes to implementing digital twins, one of the first things we need to do is create a model of the product or process that we're twinning. So this normally involves the so-called computer-aided technologies, or CAX for short. So these include computer-aided design, which is used to model the shape of the object, but CAD models are not normally suitable for saying how an object will perform under different conditions, such as stress or temperature changes. So such simulations are typically done in computer-aided engineering software, and these provide a different type of model that's more tailored towards simulations. Computer-aided manufacturing, or CAM software, includes details of, for example, tool paths or machine parameters during the manufacturing stage. And all of these can be interesting in the digital twin context. So once you have your model of your digital twin, the next thing is to keep the twin updated, which means being able to monitor the physical twin in real time. So this is where the Internet of Things comes in. Internet of Things is about interconnected sensors, instruments, and other devices that are available over a network. These can be used to monitor any number of aspects of the physical twin, ranging from temperature or moisture to acoustics, or even complete computer vision systems or 3D scans. Another major question related to digitalization is how to embed knowledge in the digital twin. So this is vital for ensuring that it can be used to answer relevant questions and assist in making decisions. It's not necessarily so obvious how this knowledge can be transferred from documentation or even from human intuition into the digital twin. But this is where AI can play a big role, I think. So as many of you probably know, there's many different types of AI, but it's of course mainly machine learning, or specifically deep learning, that's been in focus the last few years. So within machine learning, you can have supervised learning, which can learn to mimic the action of labeling data, unsupervised learning, which can provide insights into unlabeled data, and reinforcement learning, which can learn to control a digital twin by trying to maximize the reward it receives by navigating an environment. So the AI methods that I just mentioned are typically compute intensive, at least during the training stage. So you typically need significant computational resources to run the digital twin effectively. So smaller businesses that don't want to invest in their own hardware, they can make use of cloud computing and high performance computing resources that are scalable and available on demand. There can often be privacy or security concerns in transferring data over public networks, meaning that companies might prefer to do their processing locally, which is known as edge computing. So in some cases, the processing can even be performed directly on the Internet of Things devices. This can save bandwidth of transferring raw data across networks. So human interaction with the digital twin is, of course, a two-way process. In some cases, we want to be able to extract information from the twin, for example, by visualizing sensor readings. In other cases, we want to be able to control the twin, for example, by being able to program what-if scenarios. So a number of technologies that are dedicated to assisting with interaction between people and digital models, including big data analytics, which analyzes trends in large data sets and presents them in a human readable way. We have virtual and augmented reality, which provide a way to visualize, for example, the results of simulations together with the physical twin. We have voice and gesture recognition that can be used to perform simple control tasks, or for more advanced control tasks, we can also use low-code platforms which allow programming tasks to be performed by non-experts. So finally, it's important to consider how to bring together all the different technologies, the large amounts of data, the many different versions of models, and many different data types and formats. So one major consideration is to involve all relevant stakeholders to ensure that the digital twin fulfills all the purposes for which it was intended. Another consideration is the use of standards and product lifecycle management software that ensures traceability and interoperability both within the business and with the outside world. So Change to Twin has 4 pilot experiments with different themes, but I'd just like to mention some of the details on the additive manufacturing pilot that Syntef is working on together with additive industries in the Netherlands. So the idea here is to reconstruct an as-built model that can be compared to the original design, so as to detect any deviations or possible defects that are caused during the process. So going through the steps I just presented, the modeling data here includes both the input design coming from CAD tools, as well as process planning information such as machine parameters and the toolpath. The digital twin is kept up to date by taking images both in the light spectrum and thermal images at every layer of the additive manufacturing process. The knowledge of which parts of the powder have been melted and whether defects have occurred is extracted using machine learning methods. In this case, the processing is fairly lightweight, so the processing can actually be done on the edge of the network. So we can interact with the 3D model through a 3D visualization tool that's available in real time during the build process. And finally, we store all the generated information in PLM, product lifecycle management systems, to ensure traceability of the different data types throughout the process. So just before I wrap up, I'd just like to say a few words about the open calls in Change to Twin. So actually, more than half the project financing will actually be distributed via cascade funding, meaning that SMEs and mid-caps can apply for experiments within the scope of the project and receive funding. So this can either be a €10,000 voucher for assessing readiness for digital twin, or a €90,000 voucher for actually deploying the digital twin in practice. So the first assessment call is closed now, but it's still possible to apply for the deployment voucher even if you haven't been involved in the assessment phase. And in any case, there will be a second round of both assessment and deployment calls next year. So we're also looking into a round of calls coming up for project proposals in the new Horizon Europe program in the autumn, so feel free to contact me if you might be interested in collaboration there. And also, if you want to know more about Change to Twin, then I encourage you to check out the website at www.changetotwin.eu. So, thanks for your attention.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Oliver. That was really interesting. And I'm really sorry, but I don't think we have time for questions, but I encourage people to put questions in the chat bar or perhaps contact Oliver directly if you have questions. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. So next up, last scientist on our science pitch segment is Laura Ruotsalainen. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Laura. But Laura is a associate professor at University of Helsinki, and she will present her research on how AI can help guide computer vision in industry. I'll bring up your slides here now.
Okay, thank you, and then hello everyone. So I hope you can hear and see me well. I'm not in my own network, so but it seems to be working fine. So yes, and I'm an associate professor at the Department of Computer Science at the University of Helsinki, but I'm also a professor member of FKI that has been presented already today. And then for the title FKI Success Stories, the basis for that is that we were selected as one of the success stories, and we made a video of our project, and I'm going to now present the video as motivation for my other speech here. But if I can get the next slide, please. No, not the video yet, but the slide still. Thank you. Okay, yes. So the project that we are working now on is funded by a Finnish industrial company called Konecranes, and we are doing the technological development together with active collaboration with the company. And so the motivation for our project is to develop deep learning based methods for computer vision for secure and efficient working of the cranes. And then therefore the motivation, if you could now launch the video, please. So there I'm explaining the background, and then I will go more into the details of the technological development and the requirements.
Yes, just bring it up. 1 second.
There's no sound.
Okay, sorry. Just 1 second. Typical, isn't it? Let's just relaunch.
So industrial halls are very exciting and challenging areas. So they have both big cranes and then humans going around the premises. And we have to make sure, especially in the future when the cranes will be autonomous, that we know exactly where the cranes are and where the humans are to avoid all accidents. Therefore, we are developing both simultaneous localization and mapping methods to know where the cranes are, and also three-dimensional object tracking so that we know all the time where the people are with respect to the cranes. So 3D object tracking means that we can really locate where the humans are in the premises. And there are already existing methods for doing the object tracking, but now we are developing novel methods to also to be able to know the exact location with respect to the cranes. The methods we develop could be used in all autonomous domains, for example, autonomous cars or drones. But the final goal of our research is to develop fully autonomous, cost-efficient cranes that could operate in the industrial premises together with the humans safely.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you. And then we can go to the next slide, please. So as mentioned during the video, so we are developing two different, but kind of like also methods that are very heavily related. So simultaneous localization and mapping called SLAM. So a method that the crane can locate itself all the time when it's going around the industrial premises. And then also so-called 3D object understanding, so that we are able to detect if there are humans or other objects moving or being inside the premises, so that the cranes won't crash onto those. And then, well, simultaneous localization and mapping methods have been developed already for decades, and there are already quite good existing methods, for example, to the use of autonomous vehicles. But then inside the industrial premises and then using the big cranes, we have quite many domain-specific challenges that we have to now overcome. And then also the companies, the industry, they also hope to have more low-cost equipment. So traditionally, the computer vision methods have been used by using LiDAR or some more expensive and more accurate equipment. But at the moment, also the companies want to reduce then the cost and have low-cost equipment. That of course then also creates errors and problems for the data that we have to cope with sophisticated algorithms. And then for these reasons, we are then developing deep learning based simultaneous localization and mapping, addressing the challenges that I will also now go through a bit. If I can have the following slide, please. Okay, great, thank you. So the computer vision means that we can teach the computer or get the computer to understand what is happening and what is going on inside or around in the environment, and what the camera, for example, is doing when it's moving inside the premises. And so at the moment, it is said that the computer's understanding in computer vision is at the level of 2 years old. And therefore we are of course then experiencing quite many challenges in the processing. But kind of like when doing the localization in the simultaneous localization and mapping by using computer vision, we are using the fact that when the camera is moving in the premises, so then different features inside the images are moving. And based on the motion of the features in the images, we can then compute how much for example, the crane in this case have moved and into which direction. But then we are experiencing quite many challenges arising from the setup of the use of computer vision for the cranes and also from the environment. So when we are using the cranes and the cameras in the cranes, they are usually pointing straight down to the floor. And also the environment in the premises is quite challenging. So there are many places where the camera sees only floor with no objects on the floor. And of course, then it's really difficult to find any features that are changing in the consecutive images and compute the displacement from there. And then also in the industrial premises, we, for example, have a lot of shiny surfaces. So we have, for example, foil that is here in the figure. And now I noticed that the figures are in wrong order. They should be the other way around. So we have, for example, here some foil material objects that are then disturbing the understanding from the images. And if I could get the following slide, please. Okay, thank you. And then also a really big problem here that we are now required to use the low-cost equipment is that we are using so-called monocular normal cameras. And there arises a problem that we are not able to understand how far from the camera the different objects are in the environment. And then that creates into the computation of the localization, so the displacement of the crane, so-called unambiguous scale. And this means that we are not really able to resolve straight the metric motion of the crane. And then for that, we also have to then find novel methods. And then so what we are doing, we are using deep learning to both get understanding of the depth of the different objects in the environment. And then at the same time, then also understand how much the crane is moving and into which direction. And then here on the left, you can see a picture showing that how we are able then to understand the depth of the different objects in the environment, and then use this information to get the real metric scale for our motion. And then next slide, please. And then also, as said, so we also, of course, need to know that where are the different, for example, the employees or other humans in the premises, and where are other objects so that the cranes don't crash those. And then for that, we are then developing methods-based so-called 3D object understanding. And then on the picture on the right, you can see one example of this 3D object understanding in the normal case. So we are able to detect which objects in the environment are humans, for example, in this case. And then also we are able to know in 3 dimensions for some accuracy. So what is the volume that they are occupying in the environment? But again, this problem gets much more difficult when we are again using the crane. And on the figure here, or on the lower part of this slide, you can see how the crane now sees the humans. So we are losing all the different traits from the humans. So we are not able anymore very accurately to detect by using the conventional methods if they are humans or if they are something else. And then for this, we are also then developing deep learning methods then to get also this done in the good way and accurate enough for the cranes. And I think, yes, these were all my slides. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Laura. And thank you to all the participants now on the science pitch. It was a great segment and lots to learn. And again, obviously, we are hoping that this type of events that we are hosting is a platform for you to connect with each other. So I'm sure all the speakers will be reachable after this event as well. Moving swiftly on to our third part of this event, we will now move on to hearing from 2 people within the industry. We will first hear from Rebecca Lötman-Rydo. She's investment director at Industrifonden, and they are a 800 million euro fund in Sweden. And Rebecca is responsible for investments in applied AI. Prior to Industrifonden, Rebecca has 8 years of experience in venture capital and has been with 2 funds. Swiftly after Rebecca, we will hear from Trond Riiber Knudsen. He's a founder and CEO of TRK Group, an Oslo-based investment and advisory firm focusing on active ownership and advisory within disruptive technologies, digital service transformation, and new African growth markets. So with that, I'll hand over to Rebecca to give the first part. Thank you.
Hi guys, really nice to be here, and thanks for the kind invitation and introduction. I'm going to see if I can share some slides with you guys. And is that working now? And then see. Yes, perfect. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we as an investor see beyond sort of the AI hype cycle and what we believe is the next thing to come, and also how we evaluate AI investments a little bit. Let's get started. I know we're running a little bit behind time, so I'll try to be quick. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why I believe it's different this time, especially what we look for when we look for applied AI companies, and then what is our sort of litmus test when evaluating AI companies. Okay, so let's start a little bit with what is different this time, because I mean, as an investor, and it's probably the same if there are more investors listening in now, the past couple of years, we've seen a real hype in AI, and AI is almost being plastered on every second pitch deck remotely related to AI. And some investors have almost grown a bit of a fatigue against the use of AI in company descriptions. But for me, I see there are several reasons why it is different this time. And I do not believe we are, moving into a new AI winter. But I think there are many reasons why the best opportunities is yet to come within applied AI. So why is that? So we've had 60 years of research, and we've had several probably examples today here of interesting research. And this means that we have more mature algorithms and a lot more research, especially the past 10 years. We've seen unprecedented progress, for example, within natural language processing and computer vision. Secondly, today we have an enormous amount of data. Just in the past 2 years, 90% of all data existing today was created. And this trend is expected to continue exponentially. And it's not just the amount of data, it's also the capacity and lower prices of data infrastructure and storage that makes these vast troves of data accessible to more people and organizations for a much lower price. Just as an example, way back in the 1980s, the first gigabyte of a hard drive was created by IBM, and it was like the size of a refrigerator, and it cost $40,000. And today you can store a terabyte of data at Amazon for like, what, $20 a month or something. So we've seen unprecedented expansion in amount of data, but also storage and the cost of storage. And then thirdly, significant progress within computing power by using graphic processes as AI accelerators has significantly improved our ability to process large data sets and train really complex algorithms, and at a much lower price point as well. And then finally, we see a huge access today to open source libraries and frameworks for development and deployment of AI. And it has lowered the barriers and democratized the use of AI. We have TensorFlow coming out of Google. We have Apache Kafka for streaming of data coming out of LinkedIn. And we have lots of others contributing to this open source system. And this is both accelerating research in itself and production in AI. So that's why, the main reasons why we think it's a little bit different, and hoping to see a lot of exciting AI investments. And what do we then believe to be sort of the winners to bet on in a landscape of many different AI applications? We as a fund are actively looking for investment opportunities in applied AI, and we believe in the near future that the most promising AI startups are the ones solving significant problems and really understanding the problem that the customers and the users have within certain vertical niches in industry and society. And the AI companies aiming a little bit more towards a broader horizontal application of AI will have a much fiercer competition, we believe, from the dominating global tech giants such as Google, Facebook, and Amazon. And just as one example, DeepMind has an R&D budget today that is many times larger than all the research grants given for natural sciences and technology by the Swedish Research Council. To summarize, vertical applications solving a really significant problem, and hopefully as well with either proprietary algorithms or proprietary data. Those we believe to be the biggest winners. And then just a little bit about how do we evaluate AI investments, and what do we specifically look at when meeting a company that has AI in its core? So, the progress. I actually had one more thing to say about what we believe to be really interesting investments. Deep learning, of course, in itself is super, super interesting and has the potential to really solve some of the hardest problems and transform the most. But I do believe that there are still some challenges connected to the lack of interpretability and it being really computationally heavy. But I do believe that deep learning specifically will be able to solve some really, really significant problems. And what we saw with Google Deep Learning last year was them doing a gigantic leap in solving the protein structures. And I think this breakthrough, in combination with Swedish or Nordic state-of-the-art life science sector, has the potential to solve hard problems like curing Alzheimer's and Parkinson over time. So I'm really, really excited about deep learning in general, but also this recent breakthrough in specific. And then another last area that can seem a little bit unsexy, but that I look at with a lot of potential. It's not AI specific, but it's AI enabling tools. So the data infrastructure layer, companies looking to solve the operational issues that we see in AI today. Because there's a fact that as much as 80% of all ML projects stop at the pilot and the POC phase today and never get put into production. And this is a huge, showstopper, getting the most value out of AI. So I actively look for companies helping this ML ops and ML workflow, such as feature engineering, data validation, and feature storage and data quality tools. Those are technologies that we need more of, and in many verticals. All right, sorry, moving on to the litmus test of AI. And here again, we start off by evaluating the problem that the companies want to solve. I think it was Einstein that once said that the formulation of a problem is just as important as the solution, and companies need to spend a lot of time on the problem and understand, is this problem widespread and significant enough? And does this problem actually need AI to be solved? Because we, as I said in the beginning, we see companies plastering AI and using AI to solve problems that might not even need AI to be solved. So we always start with the problem. The other thing is, when evaluating AI applications to invest in, we need to make sure that they are able to handle the data and get enough data to achieve the application, the AI applications they want to achieve. As we all know, garbage in, garbage out. Without significant access to reliable and correctly labeled, up-to-date, high-quality data, algorithms cannot function reliably, and solutions will falter. And today, too much time is spent in AI projects, both in research and commercially, structuring and qualifying data. So making sure you have a way of handling this data issue as a company is really important. And I think it's also an opportunity for companies. If you are able to gain access to significant amounts of data and handling this data, you can build a data moat, giving you a barrier against competitors. And I think this is also important because you see diminishing return effects over time when training AI algorithms. So real-time access to significant amounts of data. We also, of course, make sure that the team has the right competence and knowledge within artificial intelligence, or able to attract the right talent within artificial intelligence to be able to achieve what they want to achieve. And then a final aspect to keep in mind is the ethical considerations that I think is really important and growing in importance. We see we want companies to ensure ethically aligned AI system, and it requires a lot more than just designing a system whose results can be trusted. It's also a lot about the way they are designed and the purpose of the design. The AI generated is only as good as its data. You need to monitor and consider and systematically avoid bias, and being aware of any bias that your data might generate. You also need to have transparency and explainability in your data and your algorithms today. And we really strongly encourage companies to look at the EU ethical guidelines for trustworthy AI and take this under consideration when building an AI company. Okay, just some final thoughts. For me, I mean, AI has been a little bit like when we saw electric power introduced, and it was really overly hyped in the beginning. And it took a long time before it was actually implemented in our industry. And I think it took like 100 years before factories decided to replace their steam engine to be able to utilize the use of electricity fully. And we're seeing this in AI, I think. Now we're seeing more and more data infrastructure in place and more maturity in companies. So yes, AI has been overly hyped, but I believe that the best is yet to come, and companies using AI can and will solve really significant problems and be part of shaping our industry of tomorrow. So that was what I wanted to talk about today. So
excellent. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Really insightful. And
feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. We invest all across the Nordics, but main focus is Sweden, based in Stockholm.
Perfect. We'll link your details to the all the attendees afterwards. Perfect. Right. Moving on to Trond Knudsen from TRK Group. Hi, Trond.
Hello, and thank you for the invitation. My short speech today will just explain how I left McKinsey as a senior partner 5 years ago to, with a small team here, support deep tech founders coming out of Norway who have an ambition to basically make a better world and create the value. So that's what we do. So my short introduction here would be quite focused on Norway. I understand it's a broader audience, but after my time in McKinsey, I decided to focus on Norwegian tech. And I'm born in Ethiopia, so I also do a lot of work in East Africa, but that's my focus. When I started out 5 years ago, I started to see that a lot of the very best talent was moving into more startup environments. I saw scientists at the universities here being more interested in becoming entrepreneurs and founders. And I thought it would be really interesting to provide some of my networking capital to support this development. We started out in Norway from a relatively weak position. We have had a very big oil and gas sector and maritime sector, not focused that much on venture capital. So a bit of my contribution here has been to take a very active role in creating a stronger ecosystem. And I think we're starting to see that development. I would say out of the 100 investments that we have in Norway, probably 10 to 15 would qualify for the AI definition. I totally agree. I think AI in many cases are used to try to create a hype. We're also trying to be quite discerning in terms of deep tech AI. In terms of why I think Norway is a good place to build strong AI-driven companies and increasingly unicorns, starts with our access to data. It's very important to know that in Norway we have absolutely unique health data sets. And the interesting thing is that these are basically longitudinal. That means that like the Hunt database is a more than 30-year, very deep, very, high quality data set of hundreds of thousands of people that cannot be easily replicated because it takes 30 years. So scientists are coming from all over the world to do research on these databases. And there's a big government initiative on making these data more available and provide basically a stronger incentive to a science ecosystem around this data. Similarly, on the property side, on the map side, we have digital map data, digital property data in the municipalities and so forth that have been used as a starting point for developing very interesting AI companies here. and we're developing AI companies here that later on are taking some of the technology into other countries in Europe. There's a number of areas where we have wonderful data. Secondly, we have trust and collaboration in the Norwegian society that is very beneficial when you want to develop AI based on datasets. So in the North Sea, for example, every single license given to oil companies were given to multiple companies. So they all are used to collaborating and sharing data. So data sharing with the different parties in the energy sector is second nature. Likewise, I find that in retail between consumer goods companies, retailers, there's much more openness here to share data than I find in the US, for example. Much more collaboration. And we have a stronger collaboration between public sector and private sector than we find in many markets, a little bit given the structure of Norway. So this kind of trust and collaboration makes it possible to start to develop these kind of vertical applications. Exactly, these vertical applications that are tuned to where Norway has a leading position in the world within different industries. Back on that to create great AI companies and solutions. It's important to realize that we are in Norway very early on digitalization. That is really helpful for this. It means that when you introduce AI, it's not only the AI tech as such, but in a company, it's also about changing workflows and processes. And having a digital backbone and a way of working already is making that much easier. And on a number of cloud migration indexes in business, Norway has the highest score in Europe. We also are very early on automation, partly because we have highly skilled labor, but it's also very expensive labor. So automation has always been up there, and workflow optimation, for example, led by a company like Visma, this is kind of the second biggest B2B SaaS company in Europe, headquartered in Norway. So there's a lot to build on in overview. So all of this means that when we invest not on the consumer side. We think that's pretty much kind of gone to the big platforms. I think the Swedes are much better at it and so forth. We are focusing on vertical B2B applications and healthcare applications and green tech applications, new energy applications, where Norway is top 3 in the world. So we have this kind of overview of capability areas where we already have developed companies that are top 3. And these are kind of then spinning off new companies, very often AI-based, that are doing wonderful stuff. And that also in Norway has been under-communicated because we haven't had to focus that much on new venture creation. But as some examples, in terms of robotics, AI robotics, and automation, you probably know a company called AutoStore that is doing basically warehouse optimization. Just got a very large investment from SoftBank of $4 billion. And they're probably going to list on the stock exchange now, and the rumors is that it's a $15 billion IPO. These are, robotics, AI developed in Norway, and people here don't know about it, never heard about it. Or a grocery e-retailer, Oda, partly owned by Kinnevik, but now also by SoftBank. As at the heart of it is the AI specifically that developed to optimize the whole value chain in e-grocery. Follow that company, and they could do it because they did e-grocery in Norway, but increasingly they will sell the technology to other retailers globally. Another company we supported called Spacemaker that basically uses AI to optimize the development of a plot of land, kind of supporting the architect and the developer to do kind of an optimal design. 3 years old company. Used digital data in Norway, property data, map data, building data to develop the algorithms. Was sold to Autodesk 6 months ago for $250 million. It's all done in 3 years. StormGeo within weather is the biggest B2B weather player now globally. It's been developed out of Norway. Fantastic AI in that company. And of course, coming out of the energy sector, companies like Cognite, that was just became a unicorn, out of Aker, Arundo, that I was part of creating here in Norway, are doing some of the same. So it's interesting as we get to our here. I'm not going to keep you back. That McKinsey just did a review of AI implications for countries in Europe and concluded that Norway was the #1 position in Europe to benefit from AI, and primarily because we are so early on automation in our businesses and can actually take the full benefit out without losing jobs, but actually just creating better jobs. But also because we have that opportunity to create new AI engines, companies, unicorns, based on the close collaboration in Norway, the great data sets we have, and the increasing attractiveness we have for international capital and talent to come here. So that's what we're focusing on. Thank you for the invitation, and looking forward to connect with many of you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Trond and Rebecca, from a valuable insight from the investor's perspective on AI companies. So that concludes our session today. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to all the presenters, the scientists, the panelists, and to our partners, including Norwegian Cognitive Center and Nuera, who took part today as well. We will send around a link to the recording of this event and include also contact details so that people can connect more easily. So thank you again, and we hope to stay connected with you all. Thanks. Have a good day.
Thank you.